Invocation to order at 7:23. Invocation or moment of silence. Ms. Cushman.
I'd like to use this time to encourage those to engage in a moment of silence or silent prayer. And now the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fire evacuation announcement. There's 2 doors in the back of the room. Go down the double doors and out to the parking lot. There's 2 doors to my left, your right. Go down the stairs and out to the parking lot. Roll call, please, Kathy.
Mrs. Cushman,
Here.
Mr. Hamry,
Here.
Mrs. Acree,
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc, Mrs. Pickett,
Here.
Mr. Ryder,
Here.
Mr. Ungary,
Here.
Dr. Callanan,
Here.
Madam Chair.
Here. Board guests, Superintendent Drezig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, we're going to welcome our Enfield High School career counselors, Jamie and Miss Siniglio, Miss Bodderkin, sorry. I almost called you by your first name. And they're going to invite you to something.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. First, I'd like to thank you for inviting us tonight to provide a quick update about the Career Center, and thank you for all your support. We're so excited to say that we are back on track to be able to bring back all our programs that we offered prior to COVID. Already this year, we've been able to get a lot of things done. With the help of our PE department, we've met with all 9th graders in the building to talk about the role of the Career Center and our role to help them explore careers over the next 4 years. We're currently meeting individually with all juniors to discuss their career interests and goals. With the help of the school counseling department, we're meeting with the seniors in the building that are non-college bound to talk about trade, tech, and military plans. With the help and support of teachers and staff, we have already been able to host 7 career panels featuring guests in the fields of real estate, nursing, architecture and construction, legal careers, sports management, animation, and careers associated with Lifestar. With the help of Rita at Smith Bus Company, we've even taken 3 field trips. 26 students went to Gateway Community College with us to explore the automotive program. 20 students went to Eppendorf to explore careers in manufacturing. And I'm very excited to say 104 students went with us to our first 2nd grade mentoring trip this year. We recently hosted the ASFAB this fall for students interested in the military in grades 10 through 12, and 7 military branches have also come in to talk with students in the Career Center. So you might be wondering what's next. Well, that's what really brought us here tonight. Imagine sitting in the office and Jamie says, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a school-wide career day and put a guest speaker in every classroom?
I don't regret my decision, but it is a big undertaking for this year. So we have actually come to tell you a little bit about our plan for Career Day and ask hopefully for your assistance if you have the time and availability to do so. So it will actually be on Wednesday, November 23rd from 7:15 to 9:30. So check-in for guests will be around 7 to 7:15, and then everyone will go into a classroom. Classes will start at 7:30. Students will actually go to their 4 different classes that morning for 25 minutes each. So they'll be rotating to their normal teachers with their normal classmates, and they'll have a guest speaker in each of their classes. So that one guest speaker will come in, stay with that one teacher all day, and see all 4 of their classes. And it'll just be a super quick question and answer session. We have provided the questions for our speakers that are coming in. Originally, we needed 110 volunteers. We are happy to say that we currently only need about 35 still. So we have definitely been doing our work on it. So we came here hoping to ask if anyone had the time or availability that morning. We will have you out of there by 9:30, we promise. So if you do have any plans to travel for Thanksgiving or the holiday, anything like that, we want to make sure that we are respectful of that time, but we'd really appreciate your help. We've been reaching out to a lot of members of the community, a lot of different businesses and resources that we have, and we haven't even tapped into all of our resources as of yet, but we did want to come here and make that public for you if you would like to volunteer.
The information is all in your packet, so if you're worried about what you might have to answer, here's a list of our sample questions. And if you're busy cooking, but you have family and relatives that are coming in that you think might be great presenters, please just send us an email.
Awesome.
Any comments or questions from board members? Ms. Pickett?
Of course I do. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I've heard nothing but really great things about the Career Center at the high school, so I'm excited about this career day. I'm going to check my calendar, and if I can't attend, I will make sure to find a volunteer who can. So I pledge to do that. A question I have, and this came up in I'll do more detail in my committee reports, but we talked a lot about pathways and opportunities for our students at the high school, and I'm just interested to see how you all support some of that work, and hearing about like the things that you just did. You took them on field trips, but I wouldn't call it a field trip, but it is, to different places of employment. Just interested to hear how you support kind of that work with our pathways and expanding those efforts.
We're very fortunate to work with Corey O'Connell and John Daig, who have a lot to do with those, and they're always coming in with what can we offer in this area. So we offer suggestions as they're planning the pathways. Well, we can fit in this career panel or this trip, or maybe some type of education pathway where we're getting students out there on a more regular basis because we had so much interest the first time out. We're going out again November 4th. The group is a little bit smaller, but now we're starting to conflict with other trips and them being into their coursework more. So it's really finding the right group of students for each niche and just making sure that students are exposed to all the different possibilities. Because to be honest, they know what's on TV. They know what their family does and what's on TV. And if you need a crime scene solved, we have more volunteers than we know what to do with, because that is very big right now.
Yes.
So my follow-up to that would be expressed interest in our culinary pathways. We have some amazing work happening at the high school, and I'd be interested to see how that could be deepened.
Thank you.
Mr. Hamry?
So first off, thank you very much. This is a huge undertaking, and I agree with that. It's probably, in hindsight, after you said the words, maybe he's like, but some of the best things happen in those moments. And I would be remiss if I didn't. I work in human services, probably not necessarily the area that you want me to be showing up in. It's a real downer sometimes. But my point is that with the opportunities out there, were you looking for volunteers that may have an interest you haven't touched on yet, like in the arts, that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
So,
One of the things that we planned for this event was to just try and bring in as many of huge variety of careers, and so that students don't necessarily know what they're going to get, because they can sign up for the planned ones. So our students that are interested in law can come to our law career panel, but then over the course of this day, I hate to use the word forced, but they're going to be exposed to some things that they might not have thought of.
So the reason I'm asking about that is I'm very happy to have a tremendous amount of friends that are very talented in various artistic forms, whether it's music or theater or something of that nature. And I would be lying if I said that I didn't look at the camera right now and get them all ready, because I'm about to start asking. Because I would very much want to have some of their... I did not do that. Speaking of sound, I would absolutely want to put that out to them and see if they'd be interested. And I would follow up after I can make contact with them. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Sakri?
I just would like to thank Jamie and Colleen for your presentation, for preparing students for going forward to have successful careers, and by introducing the students to guest speakers to ignite the interest for students to have a successful career. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Ungary?
So again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming. I had a chance to meet with you at the school and talk about your program, and I see the great value in it, in what it brings. I remember when students basically had to meet with their guidance counselor and say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so many young people don't know really what they want to do, and or they'll say, well, what interests you? Well, I don't really know what interests me, but to expose them to a variety of different professions and vocations, it will basically inspire them to maybe gravitate to one of them that they have an interest in. So I think I applaud you for what you're doing. I think it's valuable to our young people, and it may put many of them on the road to what they're going to be in the future.
We hope so, and we hope it's a crew of future presenters, to be honest.
Mr. Ryder?
So hopefully we were successful in filling some of your voids. And you do have, my spouse will be there as well. So definitely let us know. When you said we're like 34 people away, we thought you were going to say we're 9 people short. and we
Maybe
thought,
that's what we should have led with.
we have 9 spaces left, and I see 9 adults up at the dais. So yes, I'll be there as well. So thank you for all you do. So you said you've already had a chance to meet with every freshman?
Yes.
Every 9th grader
The PE health classes, as part of their orientation to the program, brought them up to the Career Center, and we have about a 15-minute kind of presentation of all the things and the procedures to get involved and how you sign up for events and what's required.
That's what I was going to ask, if they actually came up to see your space, because I've been there as well, and we had a great time, and I just wanted to make sure that my daughter, who's a freshman this year, had a chance to actually see your offices and get a chance to chat with you. So thank you very much for all you do.
I just wanted to add a couple things. I was taking stuff off the fridge. We've probably been there too long, and I still had the card you sent Colin when he was a sophomore before COVID, after visiting the Career Center. And you said you're so happy that he has an interest in fire science. But he didn't study fire science. But you sparked an interest in him, and made him start thinking about different avenues he was going to take. So I appreciate that. But I still have that postcard. I know you're great at recruiting former students to come and participate in that. I also have seen that you are such a network within our community, and you try to network as much as you can, involving community businesses and such. I will be there. I can make it work to be there. I don't know that people would find what I do very exciting, but I love to talk about it. So I wanted to ask you a question, because I'm kind of like racking my brain to think of different avenues. Would you want like somebody who's a GA and is coaching, and they have like a grad assistant that is coaching right now because they graduated with a degree in sports management? From like, you would accept somebody who's doing grad assistant work because they're only 4 years out of high school, and that's something for people to think about. So okay, all right, I will work on that and see what I can do. Thinking outside the box, and also like a college coach. No matter what sport it is, it could be like a college coach that basically does that for a career.
That would be great.
We have lots of students interested in sports, but they honestly don't know the work ethic and what it takes to achieve some of those competitive positions. So it really helps to have people in that have done it and say that this is not where I started. Like, you don't just walk into this. You have to work your way up, and it's work ethic, it's building relationships, it's making contacts, it's all those interpersonal skills. And like our animator today from DreamWorks just kept saying, it's about being a good person. It's about just working hard and going out of your way to do some of the little things that maybe you really don't want to do. So it really helps when they see people who are in those roles say some of those things. Because we can tell them till we're blue in the face, but we're not in the positions they want.
Right.
You know, nobody's coming and saying, well, that's not true.
Best job ever.
I was going to say, that obviously maybe isn't true because they do come in and they go, how do we get your job? And I'm like, well, you know the right people and work really hard, and it just happens sometimes, but it takes a lot of putting your heart out there and being told no and not giving up.
Right. So, thank you for that information. I've always been a big fan of the Career Center, so it's great to see you back, and I'm glad you reached out to all the freshmen so that they know that there's options, whether it's entering the workforce, college, and get them to start thinking, because some kids, they really don't know, and they don't know when they graduate either. So I appreciate all your hard work on that. So thank you.
Okay, good. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Superintendent Drezek, item B, I don't know if you want to address that.
Yes, unfortunately, Mr. Daigle's unable to come this evening, so we are going to reschedule him for hopefully November. We'll confirm that later on this week, but that concludes our guest for this evening. Unfortunately, Mr. Daigle is unavailable.
Great. Okay, thank you. Randy, if you're watching, we miss you. I saw your presentation at the town council meeting, and it was wonderful. So I can't wait to have you here for our board meeting. Item 7, superintendent's report. We're going to start with the student representative update, and I'll just take a moment to introduce Kayla. No. Yes, Kayla, because we had Jimmy last time. But everybody welcome Kayla. Putting you on the spot, but welcome. We're very appreciative to have you. And we're going to go ahead and start with Morgan.
So this past week, we actually had Spirit Week at our school. It actually was fantastic, to say the least. We had a great turnout. Pep rally, I think, was the best, actually. We had so much fun. It honestly was the best part. Juniors and seniors had one of the closest races I've seen in 3 years of actual pep rallies. It was 38-28 with the seniors coming out with a back-to-back victory. We beat the seniors last year. Back-to-back winners. The dance itself at homecoming on Thursday was a completely sold-out crowd. It was indoors. It was about a 35-minute wait to even get in. It took me 30 minutes, but I did it. It was fantastic. There was glow sticks being handed out. There was posters on the wall for you to take photos with. It was a great turnout, and it was very well done. Thank you, Student Council. There is a lamplighter show coming up November 18th and 19th. Friday, the 18th, it is at 7 p.m., and Saturday, the 19th, the shows are at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. It's a show called 1 in a Million. This show is a comedy about a kid who finds a winning lottery ticket. Tickets are $5 for a student/senior and $10 for general admissions. We have a fantastic turf update. It is now 100% complete. We actually had the first game on it today. I have no idea how that went. I'm extremely excited. It looks fantastic. And last but not least, Friday, October 28th, so this Friday, we will be having a complete pink out day at the high school. So get all your pink stuff out from Friday's game. I want to see some tutus. Those are my favorites. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Morgan. Kayla? Yeah, you just pressed the button.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the National Honor Society is holding an induction ceremony on November 1st at 6:30 p.m. in the EHS auditorium. And we have 2 fundraisers going on in the music department. The first one is the first annual chili cookout held by the Enfield Instrumental Music Association, and it will be on Sunday, November 13th from 1 to 4 p.m. The admittance fees are $10 for adults and $8 for students, and that allows you to go around and taste all the different chilies that some students will be making and some adults will be making. And there will be raffles, and the EHS Jazz Band will be putting on a live performance. The next fundraiser is, again, through the Enfield Instrumental Music Association, and it will be their holiday wreath sale. The music students at Enfield High and JFK2 will be selling these wreaths until November 10th. And this weekend, October 29th at 12:30 p.m., the marching band will be performing at Veterans Memorial Stadium in New Britain for their marching band championships. And then we have 4 senior nights going on this week and next week. On today, October 25th, girls volleyball had their senior night. JV played at 5 and varsity began at 6. On Friday, October 28th, at the Enfield Annex at 3:45 p.m., girls swim will have their senior night. On Tuesday, November 1st, on the EHS turf at 6 p.m., girls soccer will have their senior night. Ceremony will start at 5:30, and the game is against Ram. And then the next day, on Wednesday, November 2nd, on the EHS turf as well at 6, boys soccer will have their senior night also against Ram. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Okay, my agenda went away. Okay, item B, Superintendent Drezig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a reminder that all Enfield Public Schools will dismiss early with lunch tomorrow, Wednesday, October 26th, for a staff half-day PD, and again on Thursday, November 3rd, for elementary conferences and secondary staff half-day PD. Students will not attend school on Tuesday, November 8th for Election Day, and for staff, they'll attend a full professional learning day. All students will be dismissed early with lunch on Wednesday, November 9th for elementary afternoon conferences and secondary staff half professional learning day. And all Enfield Public Schools will be closed on Friday, November 11th in observation of Veterans Day. In addition, I have to take this opportunity to congratulate Sydney Marshall, who is an Enfield High School soccer player who had a hat trick last week and is now a candidate for the Channel 3 Athlete of the Week. I also have to apologize for her because I couldn't vote for her. The reason is my nephew was also a candidate for the Athlete of the Week, and he threw 7 touchdowns last week, and I already voted. So, Sydney, I apologize. I figure I got a 50-50 shot on this one, so if he doesn't win, I hope you do, but I apologize in advance. I want to mention also to the board, those of you who may have students in our primary schools, we talked a lot about restructuring some of the things in the district, and I'll get into that in further weeks. But one of the things you all know, Dr. Carrie Wiley, formerly as our STEAM coordinator for the district, but in her new role, one of the things that we recognized was the amount of technology that we currently own and procured over the years, and really the availability of not just staff using it and students using it, but really engaging families using it. So she's announcing that on the week of November 14th, 15th, and 16th, we're hosting digital citizenship nights at our 3 primary schools, with Henry Barnard being on November 14th. And there's 2 options. It's from 5:15 to 6 and then 6:15 to 7. The following night, I believe, is Enfield Street School on the 15th, and then on the 17th is Hazardville Memorial School. This is an opportunity for parents to bring in your students' iPads and to support learning at home. So you can discuss iPad basics, caring for the iPad, screen time. Be a lot of discussion about digital citizenship, which actually came up from this dais from one of you. I think mentioned that at one point during our meetings. It's also a discussion on internet safety, especially for our youngest learners, and I believe it might have been you, Mrs. Cushman, who had asked that once before, and also best practices for Enfield Public Schools instructional apps. One of the things we recognized over the last few years is we have a lot of technology in the district that was kind of forced upon us out of necessity, but we're really not maximizing the use and the potential for it. So this is something that we are excited to start rolling out, and I can't tell you that we don't have a better person than Dr. Wiley, who's going to be leading these conversations with families and with staff members who choose to attend. So look out, that'll be included in your packets going forward, but I know some of you have children in those schools, so you don't have to ask me about it. It's happening at your kid's school, Mrs. Pickett. Next, I know I made reference to it, and I've gotten a lot of inquiries from families. Tomorrow, there's going to be a school messenger going out. And I'm also going to ask our principals and building leaders to send them out in their newsletters in the event people don't subscribe to School Messenger for the Superintendent's Advisory Council. The application, I think Mr. Barrasso, he put together an electronic form, which actually looks really cool on a phone, because that's how most people will react to it. It's not a formal application. It's pretty simple, like I stated last time. You need to know who you are, where your kids go to school, how do we reach you? And then most important, one of the things I was just interested for my own knowledge is, why are you interested in participating in something like this? I don't know the reaction that I'm going to get formally, so I haven't said it, and I've gotten this question a lot, how many people pick me, those types of things. I don't know if I'm going to get 100 responses or if I'm going to get 12 responses, so it really is going to be depending upon what the responses go, but I'm hoping to make it making sure that we're representing the entire community from not just all different levels, but different backgrounds. So that's really my focus on putting this together, with the hopes in the coming weeks to set that first meeting where, as I stated here, the agenda is going to be driven by the group. Nobody wants to sit in a room and listen to my agenda. That's not the purpose of this. So that is coming tomorrow. You'll get a school messenger from us tomorrow. Sorry, that one's coming from me. I know you get them from your schools all the time. That one's mine. And once we start gathering applications, we'll leave them open for a bit, and then we'll get communication out to those who are willing to participate. And lastly, this actually just got released formally to me today. I know it's been a topic of conversation, I'm sure, nationally, and it's been referenced on national news shows. But as we've started this school year, we talked about this briefly last time, you've started to see sort of a theme from me and what I'm going to use my time for, about what we're doing and the changes that we need to make in order to meet our kids where they are. And we talked at length last time by using the Ed site, and I apologize, Ms. Pickett, you happened to miss the meeting. I know you would have went nuts using that because you do work for the state. But one of the themes last week was really getting an idea of what do our kids make, who are our kids? Who are we? What makes up our demographics in our kids, and identifying those needs. And I mentioned last week, Mr. LeBlanc is not here, but I appreciated when he had asked for an academic update, because we wanted to make sure that we're putting things in context. This is the first snapshot that we're getting post-COVID, and that's not an excuse. It's not pointing fingers. This is what it is. This is what our kids have been through the last 2 years, and this is really the first snapshot that we're getting on what we're dealing with. From an academic perspective. And we've talked briefly, and we started off with our equity statement and the importance of establishing that. Then we had a SEL presentation. We know people have their own interpretation of what that is. We wanted to show you what we're doing. We took a look at our demographics last meeting to show this is what our needs of our students are. And before we start drilling down into what our results are in Enfield, we have to take a step back and look at what has happened over these last 2 years. And there's been a lot of apparently media attention about this, because people keep asking me, have you seen it? And my answer is yes. But what's known as the National Report Card was released earlier this week. And that is really the first opportunity that as a nation and also as a state that we can look at general performance of our kids post-pandemic, post-COVID era. And just to sort of highlight or lowlight, however you want to look at it, but the reality is the numbers are what they are. But that really has to drive our decisions and has to drive the supports that we're going to put in place for kids going forward. We talked about we need to have almost like a reset, and I don't like saying that, but the reality is the old way of looking at performance data of year after year after year, there's a pretty significant event jammed in there from 2019 to today, and we have to put that in context. But just to put it in context, traditionally when the National Report Card comes out, the State Department of Education releases how the state of Connecticut measured up against other states throughout the country in the national average. And typically, being in Connecticut, we've always outpaced in particular areas. And I won't go through the whole thing now. I'll just pick out a couple of brief ones, again, just to put it in context. But when you look at percent proficiency in grade 4 for mathematics, as an example, in 2019, the state of Connecticut was at 45% proficiency, whereas the national number, that national report card, was at 40%. So we were outpacing the national average by 5%. When you look at the 2022 year, in fourth grade mathematics, the state of Connecticut is down to 37%, whereas the national average also fell down to 35%. But you can see that gap is now much smaller. So in the years of we're always outpacing the national average, this didn't discriminate against how difficult these last few years were for our kids and how they learned. When we look at reading for grade 4, and again, the Connecticut average back in 2019 was at 40% proficiency, and the national number was 34%. Our number in 2022 for the state of Connecticut was 35%. and the national number dipped to 32%. So we saw more statewide a drastic decrease than even the national average has. So there's perceptions and context when you're looking at these figures. The other thing that kind of is glaring to me, and I'll just mention a few of them quickly, is we have the opportunity to break that down. I spent last meeting talking about who we were and our demographics. Well, this national report card statewide as well breaks that down for you as well. So when you look at your CT average scale scores for, again, I'll use 4th grade mathematics. When you look at all of our students statewide for Connecticut, our average score was 236. And that's the proficiency score for mathematics. When you look at the scale score for the national number, it's only 235. And this is current year. This isn't going 19 to 20. This is what the current year information is. So we're still outpacing the national by 1 point. It's basically a break even. But then when you break that down further and you look at white students, 248 to 245. So the state is outpacing the national by about 3 points or so. Not huge, but we're still outpacing it. And you look at the average scale scores for black students, 211 to 216. So the state of Connecticut is actually down 5 points compared to what the national average is. When you look at Hispanic students, 219 to 224. We're actually being outpaced by the state national report card for, this is just grade 4 mathematics. There's more, I'll just stick it there for context. Asian Pacific Islander students, 260 to 257. So we're outpacing a little bit the national average, but essentially it's a break even. That's the way the state classifies it. We talked a lot last week about our free and reduced lunch numbers. Well, they referenced that the National School Lunch Program is essentially the comparative tool when you're looking nationally. When you look at the Connecticut scale, our Connecticut average at 219, whereas the national average is 223. We're actually below the national average as a state, whereas that's something we had outpaced in previous years. We talked a lot last week or 2 weeks ago about students with disabilities, those kids who only have IEPs, and I mentioned about the 504 process and how we're going to see an influx of students with IEPs. We're about even. We're actually a little bit below, 207 as a state and 209 nationally. And then the big one, we referenced this in the past as well, is our English learners. And the state of Connecticut is at 210, and the national average is 215. So there is this perception, this concept that we're in the Northeast, we're in Connecticut, we always score better than the national average. Well, COVID didn't discriminate who's going to have the most dramatic effect through all of this. And we're starting to see it for the very first time. And this is really the first snapshot that we're getting of academic data post-COVID. So I'm sharing this with you, and there's reading, and there's grade 8, and there's other metrics, and I won't take up the whole evening doing that. But I thought it was important for not just the members of the board, but also the members of the audience and the people who are watching at home to put all of this in context. I've been saying this since we started back this school year, that we need to start looking at things through a different lens. We need to make adjustments to the way that we deliver instruction, the way that we allocate resources, the way that we operate, because we need to meet our kids where they are, not where we think they should be, not where they were supposed to be. The reality is our kids are going to be where they are after what they've been through, and we have an obligation to meet them there. So when people ask, what are the things that keep you up at night? I think anyone who had a chance to see this, and it's out there in public reports, I heard there's been national, my wife told me she saw it on the Today Show. I didn't see it, but she told me it was on there. Of all the things that we deal with in this chamber and in our personal lives, this is the thing that keeps me up at night. This is the first time it's quantified. This is what happened to our kids throughout this process. And it's not pointing fingers at anyone. It's not anyone's fault. It's a once in a hopefully lifetime generation, 500 years, whatever you want to call it, pandemic that we all had to live through. And we knew, closing schools in March of 2020, we knew no one didn't disagree that was a bad thing, but it was necessary. It's what happened when you're dealing with something like that. So the reality is we need to change the way that we're operating because we need to meet our kids where they are. And we need to make sure that we're moving our kids from where they are to where we need to get them. The other thing I think is and the reason I wanted to talk more about the demographic numbers is, and it's very disheartening. I mean, there's one thing that's kind of universally agreed upon in the education world, no matter what your thought process is that there is an achievement gap in this country. And we as a country, as a state, and as a district had taken strides to close that gap. It's still not perfect. It's not where we would like it to be, but there was measures taken to that. What I fear, and a lot of us fear, is this is only widening that gap. And all the progress we had made pre-2019 has now been reversed. And what are we going to do to address those needs of these kids to make sure we get them where we need to be? So I'm sharing this with you as sort of the next phase of, it was important on our definition of equity. It's important on social and emotional learning. And I'll share a quote that actually came from Commissioner Russell Tucker today with this, that the results from our state assessments and now our NAEP amplify the continued sense of urgency to act comprehensively with all of our education partners to address the academic and non-academic needs of our students and to support the professional needs of our educators. So to tie back what I shared earlier, I'm not starting a parent advisory committee just because I got nothing to do on a Wednesday night or Tuesday night, whenever we want. We need to partner with everyone. We can't do this alone. Our kids have been through something over the last several years that none of us planned for and none of us had lived before, but we get them 6.5 hours a day. This has to be a continuation at home, and if we can't meet them with their needs at home, we have to make sure that there are avenues that our kids can continue to get the support that they need, which goes to what I started with Dr. Wiley. We give them the device. They have the device. They can take them home. But we need to make sure that everyone's on the same page to realize the capability the device has. In order, going all the way back to supporting what I'm sharing with you this evening is, our kids are struggling right now, and we have an obligation to fix that. So that's the next sort of phase was, okay, now this is what's happening nationally. There's some state information in here. We'll break the state information down a little bit further. But at this point, as far as the next phase and what we roll out, I know Ms. Middleton is going to reach out and put on the agenda for the curriculum meeting in November to start breaking down some of our academic performance. I believe we meet very shortly after as a public board on the 22nd, so I don't know if there's enough turnaround because traditionally the curriculum committee has an opportunity to see this. They don't get as granular at the board level, so that's a discussion amongst the committee about what actually resembles itself when it gets here, with the hopes of by December, Ms. Middleton and her team will come back and we'll start having this pretty robust conversation about where we are. But more importantly, keep in mind, what are we going to do to address it? Ironically, we get to January, I'm going to give you a budget. And that budget's going to reflect everything I've been talking about since September. It's going to look a little different. But the reality is, this is where our urgent needs are. So with that said, that will conclude the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Drezek. The next item, audiences. I'd like to thank everyone who signed up to speak, and the fact that our meeting's running late because we came up late from executive session. So I apologize for us being so late, and I appreciate your patience. With that being said, I'm going to, with the amount of speakers tonight and the fact that we made you wait, I'll give you all 4 minutes this evening. Greg Gray? Yes, I have to mention that you have to be an Enfield resident. You must, oh my goodness, I'm losing my train of thought. You must not refrain from personalities, and we will not discuss personnel matters. And you need to state your name and address. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead. Yes.
Members of the board are wondering if you are a resident of Enfield, Connecticut.
I am. My name is the Reverend Dr. Greg Gray, and I reside at 1449 Enfield Street. I'm highly concerned about the ongoing conversation from Mrs. Cushman regarding banning books. At the policy committee meeting, Ms. Cushman presented a list of books she deems worthy of banning, including this one, titled "This Book is Gay" by Juno Dawson. This book is not actually in our public school libraries. Now, I know that this is not a back and forth, so you shouldn't answer me right now. However, Mrs. Cushman, I would like to know during your board comments, have you ever actually read the book that you wish to ban? If so, which parts do you find so egregious? I have read the book myself, and on page 88 under the part titled Paranoia. Some would argue that both homophobia and transphobia have roots in suspicion and paranoia. The less we understand a group in society, the less we bother to learn, the more misconception and worries that we have. If you haven't actually read the book but wish to ban it based solely off of its title, that could lead your constituents to believe that you arbitrarily hate gay people. And I'm sure that you wouldn't want for that misconception to be perpetuated in this town. So I really look forward to your comments. Now, here is a book that actually is in the school library, the Holy Bible. I'm very familiar with this book. I read from it publicly weekly as well as in my own private devotion. Are you aware that historically Jews were not able to study the prophet Ezekiel until they were adults because of its graphic content? Hear now a reading from the Holy Bible according to the prophet Ezekiel. When she carried on her prostitution openly and exposed her nakedness, I turned away from her in disgust, just as I had turned away from her sister. Yet she became more and more promiscuous as she recalled the days of her youth when she was a prostitute in Egypt. There she lusted after her lovers, whose penises were like those of donkeys and whose semen was like that of horses. So you longed for the lewdness of your youth when Egypt, in your bosom, was caressed and your young breasts were fondled. This book is actually on the shelves for our kids to read. My suggestion for you, if you're worried about pornography and lewdness for our children to read, you might want to start here instead. Thank you.
Lynn Kostick.
Good evening. Lynn Kostek, 13 Teach Street. First of all, just being here tonight, it's like a breath of fresh air. This clown show that's been going on here for months really needs to end. I've said this once before, I am unaffiliated party, and watching what the Republicans have been doing to our children and to this town is just, it's horrifying. And here it is, you guys are on the Board of Education. This is what the children are looking up to. They look up to adults, and if you can't act like an adult and talk like an adult and respect other people like adults, how can we tell this to our children? How can we raise our children? It's all about the kids. Now we got two young ones on the panel. And then they witness this every week. You know, it's just, I'm going to look at you two. You know who I'm talking about. It's got to end. And all this stuff on Facebook, the people that you urge to come into these meetings needs to stop. And Madam Chair, all I'm asking is when these people do come in to speak, please check their addresses, because I really don't think some of them even live in this town. So, like I said, it's a breath of fresh air tonight that we're all acting like adults, and I like this. And you too need to grow up. Thank you.
Brandon Jewell.
Good evening. I'm Brandon Jewell, 1114 Gatewood Drive. Two things. I just want to go back on what Josh Hamry said last board meeting. I am the president of PFLAG Enfield. We are starting our support groups starting November 7th for in-person for youth, adults, and allies. And those meetings will be the first Monday of every month, and then we have virtual the third Saturday of every month. If the student representatives want to go back to GSA, I would absolutely love that. Secondly, Ms. Cushman, this whole book ban you first proposed is ridiculous. Secondly, you were on camera saying that you didn't want to ban books, you only wanted to create guidelines. But when the camera wasn't on you, you proposed books to ban. All these books are LGBTQ. You say that you're for every child, you're not. You need to stop with the lies and stop with the hate towards our community. Thank you.
Juliet Leith.
Juliet Lee, 3 Catherine Road. The Enfield Board of Education and School Administration have the responsibility to represent Enfield parents and citizens on school issues. It makes sense that a constituent with a question or a problem would contact a board member who most closely represents them. Mrs. Cushman and Mr. Ungar are doing their due diligence in representing to this board their constituents who are concerned about pornography and what lessons are being taught to children in our schools. A board member may personally be done with an issue, but if that issue is brought from a parent to a board member for answers, the issue is not done. Parents who want answers should get them. The pizza lesson was shocking and covered extensively by media. There are still unanswered questions and concerns about what our health curriculum includes in totality. Such curriculum concerns are also arising across our country from a variety of religious, political, and people groups who are concerned about the curriculum content in their schools. Boards of education nationwide are hearing from parents who are furious over the pornographic content of lessons being taught to their children. The social engineering occurring in our schools will not be accepted by all parents. It is divisive. We do not all share the same moral or social values. Telling Enfield parents that they can opt out their children from a lesson or class means the curriculum stays in while their children are separated out from their class. Discriminatory? There is a growing awareness of a resolution to these real and ideological problems. It is a school voucher system where a portion of parents' tax money would be set aside in a dedicated account. Parents would be able to use the money in these accounts for their choice of the education for their children, whether it be for public, private, religious, or homeschool education. It is an equitable solution to a real problem. Love your neighbor as yourself, Mark 12:31. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, Luke 6:31.
Kelly Jackson.
Kelly Jackson, 30 Mead Lane. Is it on? Yeah, it's on. Let's see. On August 13th, a student was fundraising for his football team and was threatened and called racial slurs over and over. He walked away with his hands up because he wasn't sure if the man had a gun. After 2 months of fighting and another police report, a warrant is in the works for the hate crime your student, my son, dealt with. We had a community conversation, and half of this BOE made a statement talking about how my son talking about what my son went through, and it was horrible, and they sent out their thoughts to him. Our superintendent reached out immediately to express his frustration. They spoke against the hate, they stayed for the conversation, they showed their care for their student in the public school they represent. On the other side, you talked about anything but what happened and couldn't be bothered with the conversation. We also had one who stated that he didn't know what systemic racism was. Well, let me explain it to you real fast. Systemic racism is when your son calls the police due to being a victim of a hate crime, but the police victimized the opposing party so much that they ignored the man he admitted it, to threatening my son. And then to sit up here and recite the school motto and agree to the equity statement is such a slap in the face to our Black and brown population. I don't know how you sit up there meeting after meeting and feel good about yourself. A person came up 2 meetings ago and said, let's not make a mountain out of a molehill. No, let's talk about how to protect our Black and brown students, because this is not the first time. A couple years ago, another Black student was fundraising for football and was called names and followed down the street. I will always wonder what happened with that situation. Systemic racism and implicit bias is happening in 2022. How do you plan on protecting your Black and brown students? Ignoring it doesn't change the outcome.
Peter Janitis.
My name is Peter Janitis, 3 Farmstead Circle, and just a quick comment on the career day. I know it's a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds, but if you need somebody to speak on retirement, I'd be willing to do it. Now, I had to wait a month to finish my last prepared statements, which I'd like to do. The last thing I had to say, I just wanted a couple seconds. I raised my family in Enfield, 3 kids, a lovely wife, and I am proud to call Enfield my hometown. That's all I had left to say. But now that I'm here, I found other things to talk about. I do know the report about 4th and 8th grade achievement across the country that came out. I heard about it yesterday. But I'm here to talk about Enfield. And what I would like to know is what each of you have individually or as a board specifically proposed to get our school system off the list of being an alliance district. If there's anything we have to do, that's where we got to go. That, to me, would be number 1 priority. Also, a couple other things, just shooting from the outfield. I don't come up here and speak on behalf of the Enfield Republican Town Committee. I come up here and speak about what I feel. As far as numbers that Mr. Drezek threw out today, I think we got to be careful when we play with these numbers, because we can compare state to state, subject to subject, and percentiles, and they can vary greatly within the state itself. We, as a district, along with 30-something other districts, are probably pulling the average down a little bit, quite a bit, when you compare it to Greenwich and the Gold Coast and stuff like that. So we got to be careful when we start comparing things like that. As far as the attack on a couple of our board members, I wish that would stop. If you want to start all this love and stuff, then stop attacking these people. They're entitled to their opinion, just as any one of you are entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to knock you for your opinion. I may have a difference of opinion, but let them say what they want to say. And the last thing, when you ask somebody if they are a resident of town, I would think that's where you are registered to vote and pay taxes. And I would like to make sure everybody does that when they come up here and speak. Thanks. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Liz Davis.
Good evening. My name's Liz Davis, and I reside at 201 North Maple Street. Great job on the briefings tonight. I was listening to them on the drive. A lot of detail from you guys. Lot. And great game tonight. So, a few things I want to cover, going back a couple meetings. One thing I do want to address is I want to thank my friends and everybody in the community that kept the outpour to try to defend me to the videos and what the Enfield Republican Party's been doing, their committee, attacking me, altering videos, saying whatever they want. But I want to say it on the mic because as I told everybody, as much as I appreciate it, when you have bullies, you don't give them any time. So I know everybody knows the truth about me, so I just want to say it on the mic. Please do not defend me because all they want is attention. Okay, just like a child, and that's how they're acting. So I know where I stand. I'm very secure of who I am and what I do throughout the community. They might not be, and mostly when people are insecure, they target other people. But normally when people are hidden that they're gay or bisexual or they're questioning their own identity, they really love to target the gay community. Because if you look at back in the day, people slept with the same sex a lot, and then it became this whole thing about gay. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of people that target the gays down the road come out and they're gay. So with that, look at the people coming and speaking. So again, if they're targeting people on Facebook, please just let it go. They just want the attention. And let's teach our children the right way. Ignore the bully and walk away, or you stand up another way. But to just give them attention, that's not going to happen. And also on Parents Seeking the Truth, they will be putting out the roster of the Enfield Republican Town Committee with everybody on it. So everybody can see firsthand who's on the committee, who's their spouse that comes and speaks, and you'll see. So it all comes from your Enfield Republican Town Committee to disrupt our public education system and our couple church that belong to a cult in town that we have filed charges, and hopefully the investigation's going good. Because of the separation, they should also lose their tax exemption also if you're going to involve yourself in our education. You guys have Catholic schools. We do not go there and tell anybody in a Catholic school how to educate the students. So we'd appreciate if you keep your Christian stuff at your churches and not tell us how we should be changing it for our public school. And I would have to say, Pastor Greg, wow, that Bible, and that's in our school, that's more graphic than any assignment that went home to any child, even high school children. So we might want to re-look at the Bible and let's put in check. And everybody, please keep an eye out for the local cult in town. There will be signs going up in town. I want everybody to watch their children, and let's keep an eye on them. Thank you all for what you do.
That's the end of audiences. Item 9, board member comments. Ms. Acree.
Good evening. I'm doing announcements from the desk of Principal Dupere at Prudence Crandall. This week, grade 3 had their first fire prevention lessons. They talked about exit drills during the lessons. These exit drills are in the home. The fire department will be returning every month for the next 8 months for the grade 3 children. On Friday, October 28th, Crandall will be holding a pink out day. Students can dress in pink and bring in $1, which is optional, to be donated to the breast cancer research. Also on that day, the Crandall Barnard PTO will host a trunk or treat at Asnuntuck from 6 to 8. If you would like to donate candy, please send it to the office. The next Spirit Week at Prudence Crandall will start the week of October 31st. On Monday, wear orange, black, or purple, which is Halloween. On 11/1, Pajama Day, but no slippers are allowed on that day. On November 2nd, Hat Day, students can wear their favorite hat. November 3rd, Superhero Day, dressed as your favorite superhero. And on November 4th, Crazy Sock Day, rock your crazy socks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Acree. Dr. Calnan?
I'd like to start off with just a couple of remarks about something that I'm sure all of you are eager to hear, COVID. There has recently been a slight uptick in COVID hospitalizations in the northeastern part of the country. Cases and hospitalizations have also been increasing in Europe, though the significance of this is unclear. There are newer COVID subvariants that are emerging, but they remain in the Omicron family, and it's anticipated that the newly developed COVID boosters will continue to offer protection against severe and life-threatening disease. As we approach the winter season, all of us should be very concerned about both COVID and the flu. We are well aware of the terrible damages the COVID pandemic has inflicted upon our children, both academically and emotionally, as our superintendent just mentioned earlier. We must do everything in our power to safely keep our schools open in the months to come. And the best way to do this is to get our kids and ourselves vaccinated against this terrible virus. With respect to Stowe, we've already talked a little bit about an app called Sparkler at previous board meetings. This app should greatly contribute to the promotion of optimal childhood development and assist in the identification and referral of at-risk children. The app does three things. First, by means of screening, it helps parents identify possible challenges in a variety of areas of early childhood development. Secondly, it offers a large number of play-based offline activities that children and providers can engage in together in order to help foster healthy development. And thirdly, it offers access to 211 for advice and assistance. In fact, if the screening tool known as ASQ indicates a potential area of concern, a coordinator from 211 or somebody from the Stowe Early Learning Center will actually contact the family to offer help in connecting them with appropriate services. The Enfield Child Development Center will soon be getting their Sparkler access code, which will be shared with the families of the center serves. And the ECDC staff will soon receive training on the use of the app. The app will also be shared with the Enfield Food Shelf. Children in families experiencing food insecurity are at high risk of encountering developmental and social emotional challenges, so this connection is particularly important. And finally, ECDC is hoping eventually to work with Enfield pediatricians on the use of the Sparkler app. Pediatricians see virtually all young children in the community they serve, and one of their chief responsibilities is to identify, assess, and refer children at risk to the appropriate resources. And by at risk, I mean of developmental challenges. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that in terms of addressing childhood development and pediatric practices, Sparkler could be a real game changer. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Kalman. Ms. Cushman?
I recently had an opportunity to send an email, and I just figured I might share that because it may address some of the things that were brought up tonight. In my email, I write, I regret that my comments at the board meetings came across as hateful. I assure you there is no hate in my heart toward you or anyone in the LGBTQ plus community. In bringing this subject up for discussion, my desire is simply to establish guidelines that would ultimately protect all of our youth, regardless of their sexual identity or orientation. At the risk of sounding repetitive, I hope to try to offer a better explanation. Since there are obscenity ratings for DVDs, one would never expect to find X-rated pornographic movies in school libraries. The rating makes it clear that such movies do not belong there. If found in any school library, it is certain movies of this nature would be swiftly challenged and removed, regardless of whether the actors in the film were engaging in heterosexual or homosexual activity. The same should be true of books. However, without such ratings or other guidelines, books that are considered pornographic are making their way into our school and classroom libraries across the nation. I believe it to be a valid concern that these books would be available to any student, regardless of their sexual orientation. Youth may have access to such material through their own personal devices, but when schools make this material available to students, whether through an online platform or hard copy materials, it gives students the impression that the content is valuable and beneficial, and that schools support and encourage it. This leads me to question, should schools encourage and normalize sexual behavior for any youth? Does teaching youth how to download and use sex apps with photos and location enabled, does that contradict the lessons in digital citizenship taught in our schools? How might it put our students at risk? These books open the door to graphic sexual activity. For students who read these books, how would one expect the content to influence student behavior and subsequent interaction with peers? Does it increase the likelihood of engaging in sexual activity? Does it increase their risk regarding online predators? Does it increase the likelihood of sexually transmitted diseases or infections? Does it increase the likelihood of becoming trafficked or being one who purchases sex? Does it increase the likelihood of drug use, drug addiction, or overdose? Does it increase the likelihood that a student will become addicted to pornography? Those last questions regarding drug use, there's actually a study put out that says that youth opioid use is directly linked to sexual risk behaviors. That was by the CDC. And the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics says drug use increased by 61% among 8th graders between 2016 and 2020. So those to me seem very valid concerns. Regarding the books, it's true. I did provide a list of books in an email and to the policy committee, because when the idea of me wanting to ban books, it's not really what it's about. It's really about defining what's healthy and what's safe for our students. So when people were showing up and talking about banning Mark Twain and Stephen King and Shakespeare, that's off the topic. But I believe that the majority of people in our community are absolutely unaware of the books that are out there and that students have access to in schools across the nation. So, and unfortunately, it's true that the majority of these books happen to be targeted to the LGBTQ plus community. That's unfortunate. It's almost like they're highly sexualized books suggesting to them, perhaps, that the most significant and valuable part of their identity is their sexual orientation. Storylines seem to suggest that sexual activity dominates most of the interactions between this population of youth. Is that really the message that we want to communicate to them? The questions and concerns that I have raised really apply to the safety and health of all of our youth. I apologize if it seems I'm targeting a single population, but I speak from a concern for all. And truthfully, I have read This Book is Gay. I would not even read. Perhaps you chose an excerpt that was acceptable, but I would not even read it here at this meeting. It's appalling. It's appalling. If adults want to read the book, that's your prerogative as an adult. But to have books like that available for youth, I would like to protect our schools from having those books even be on the shelves. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Cushman. Mr. Hamry?
Thank you. I want to start off first with information about JFK PTO updates, and I am remiss for not thanking Leslie, the PTO president, at the last meeting for sending the updates. But with that said, the PTO club catalog has been released. Students must sign up online with their Microsoft 365 account You can go to enfieldpto.com/JFK to access the school website, and the catalog is under the quick links. Also, students are welcome to dress in the spirit of Halloween on Monday the 31st, this coming Monday. Masks are not permitted. Costumes must be school appropriate. And thank you very much again to Leslie for sending that information through. I want to send out some congratulations to the JFK football team, the Enfield High football team this past Friday night. Yeah, JFK just got a football team. So far. But yes, major props to Enfield High School's football team for an incredible game that they just really put all out there for. And they lost by 2 points, but what a game it was. And that was not a loss at all. It was an incredible game. So to that, I want to just digress to EMA, the Enfield Instrumental Music Association, and Dave Orton and everybody that's involved with that organization. They are doing everything that they can to promote and raise funds for the band. And I just want to point out in the process, the reason why they do so much fundraising is because they don't get any of the ticket proceeds to improve their program. So they do the fundraising as much as they can. And I myself personally donate through Amazon Smiles directly to EMA. So if you're interested in doing that, it's readily available. And an apology to Dave because he did mention the chili cook-off. I'm actually interested in participating on some level. Haven't figured out what yet, but I look forward to that. I wanted then, again, to the student representatives, pass along that there's for the purposes of sending it to the GSAs, that there's Enfield's Pride Game Night happening tomorrow night, 5:30. And one of the best things about this is that it is free of cost to anybody participating. Food is provided. The dinner tomorrow is going to be provided by Enfield Pride. Dessert is going to be provided through Enfield PFLAG. And I want to thank the speaker earlier that provided the information on PFLAG and just stating that PFLAG is for the parents, friends of lesbians and gays, to not limit anybody that wants to be supported and get support and provide support. It's for the entire LGBTQ spectrum. So I don't want anyone to feel that PFLAG is not designed for them. Next. I don't want to miss any of the comments here. I do want to make a comment to one of the speakers that proposed removal, that we all have an individual proposal on how to remove the district from the alliance status that we've begrudgingly earned. There's a serious demonstrated lack of paying attention to what was provided by the superintendent to how we got to be an alliance district and the steps it takes to get out of that alliance district. And with due respect to everybody on the board, we are not the subject matter experts on how to do that. If anybody has a source that they can provide that would help the administration do that, I think they would appreciate that. But we just, it's well outside of our normal scope of responsibilities. But to all of the speakers, I do appreciate your speaking, and thank you very much for the comments. They are noted. With that, the national report card, it's I heard about it too yesterday when it was released. It was reassuring insofar as that it's good to know that we are not the only district that's suffering, that our students are not the only ones that are trying to catch up from everything that's happened over the last 2 years. And, excuse me, I would be very, very surprised if this is not a generational impact, that it's not just a matter of a couple of grades getting caught up from the impact of 2 years worth of virtual learning. This is going to be a generational thing that takes a long time to recover from, to the degree that it affects the entire country. So, and again, I do look forward to that parent advisory committee, just at least on the peripheral. And if I'm involved in that as a parent with my child at Enfield High, that would not be a terrible thing at all. Speaking of my child, I want to give him some credit. I am very happy with the trust my son has given me in trusting me with some music that he likes. I talked not too long ago about the music that I grew up with and Dee Snider and his defense of the music of my age. So when my son comes to me and talks to me about a rapper that he likes, it's not my particular genre of choice. I do have a couple of really strong songs from that genre that just resound, that resonate with me rather. But he talked to me about this rapper named NF. Now, I imagine that the high school population may know of them. He does. I didn't, but he said he's good because he doesn't swear. And I took the time to listen to the music, a little bit of it anyway, and it is intense music for any age from this particular artist. And that my son trusted me to share with me that he likes to listen to this music, and as much as it is heavy material, it is refreshing to know that my student can empathize with the struggles that that particular artist shares. So thank you for all of that. I appreciate you allowing me the time to talk about that. Now, and kudos for mentioning Lamplighters. I appreciate that. That's an organization that I'm very, very fond of, as my daughter was involved with them until she graduated last year. Still helps out backstage for this year. So kudos to Lamplighters, and I wish them all the best in that upcoming production. I talked last month about at the last meeting about the cold weather protocols, and we had a meeting about that. It is not any less gloomy than I was expecting, and it's a concern moving forward. So please be aware that when it affects the town, it affects our students in a profound way. Not too long ago, I talked about asking for policy information on how to remove a board member from this dais, and followed up by the policy information that says there is no way to do that. They are elected, and as such, they are here for the duration of their terms unless they decide to step down. I knew that before I asked the question, and I said as much in the subsequent meeting. Couple of things about that, not related to how to remove a board member from the dais. I'm on the policy committee. I'm an alternate on the curriculum committee. At our most recent meetings, which you hear about during the committee reports, that email that Ms. Cushman mentioned was handed out to us as a document and not an email. Did not contain any sender information, any received, any of the typical things that identify a document as an email. So I did ask about that in an email to Ms. Cushman through the chair and the superintendent, I believe, and I apologize if it was only through the chairman. The chair, I have to check on that, but the information did not come back directly to me. It came back through the other members of the board that did receive the emailed as it was transferred between the sender and Ms. Cushman. Ms. Cushman felt it necessary to take steps to remove the sender's information to protect the senders, which is fine, I guess. But it does seem to be an issue that protecting a sender, for whatever reason, not sending the information as it was originally received, and I'm not in a position to say one way or the other. It just seems a little off the mark. And in the curriculum meeting, where I'm an alternate, Ms. Cushman is also an alternate. Ms. Acree is one of the primary members of that subcommittee. When it came to members to the items from the table for that committee, again, you'll hear about this perhaps when we get to those reports. I may have been mistaken, but I believe Janet handed to Ms. Cushman, actually to Ms. Acree, something that Ms. Acree was not aware of, because it demonstrated there was a demonstrated unawareness in that moment where the item was slid across. Now, I mention this not to cause any of the initial reactions, the oohs, the ahs, but to ask through the chair to the board, to the superintendent, about the policies and procedures of removing a member of this board from the subcommittees of which we have been appointed. I believe that since taking this chair, since being elected to this board not even a year ago, there are numerous demonstrated efforts to harm the children of this district, the students of our schools, by way of limiting what protections there are by trying to remove the policies that are in place to protect them, by suggesting that the materials that they might be able to find resource from are limited or taken out altogether. It is a intense disservice to the students of this district, and it goes against everything that this district is trying to do to protect all the students, every child, every day. When there's an active, ongoing, persistent perseverance in removing those protections and the materials that the LGBTQ community would find interesting. To the point of the email and the contents of it, it is very important to note, and I asked this during the policy subcommittee meeting, I asked about the books and such, if they were actually in our schools. And just moments ago, Ms. Cushman said, or implied, that they were. They are not. These titles are not in our schools. They're not anywhere in our schools. The question said at that point, and again, I wish there was a live feed of those meetings so you could see that discussion, but it was a public meeting, and that's why I'm very comfortable talking about it. But that discussion did go on to say, well, it's happening in other schools. It's happening elsewhere, but it's not happening in our schools. The next comment was, well, you don't know what the teachers are bringing in. We trust our teachers in this town. We should trust our teachers in this town. And I will say that my response was, we don't know what the students are bringing in. It's probably a lot worse than what the teachers would. The teachers have so much to lose and the students have so much access. To that point, I want to defend our IT department and our students and our teachers in the administration. Everything possible has been done to, and this is known by everybody sitting up here, probably the students as well, that we have such strict and stringent protocols in place to limit the access of inappropriate materials from our students while in the schools, while utilizing the technology that is necessary to get their education. We are not allowing them to access the inappropriate materials. Does it happen? Of course, I'm sure it does, because if there's a will, there's a way. So I'm not going to be completely 100% denying that it happens. But to the extent that we can, we are doing everything we can to prevent it from being something that happens in the schools, on our IT equipment, and to suggest that it is happening is a simple fallacy. It's just wrong, absolutely wrong. Again, I would ask that we take a look. I would like to know if, again, through the chair to Superintendent Drezek, what we can do to remove a member from a subcommittee so that we can limit the amount of damage that's done to the children that are most in need of those protections. I appreciate you allowing me this much time to talk. I apologize for taking up so much time, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamry. Mr. Ungeyer?
Out of respect for time, I'm not going to make this very lengthy. So, Hazardville Memorial, they have a Halloween costume collection fundraiser on November 1st. So what they do on November 1st is they buy back all of the old costumes and they hold them until next fall, and then they sell them for like $5, and they use that to generate funds for their PTO. Sometimes parents, when they have concerns, they'll go to the administration. And if they can't get satisfaction to the administration, from the administration, then they come and they appeal to us at the board. They say, I couldn't get help from the administration. Can you, on the board, could you help us? And so many times we represent the interests of those parents. They may be questions, trying to find the answers to the questions they're trying to get. And so I think that's the motivation behind some of the things you've been hearing over the past several months is trying to address concerns that parents have that they felt they weren't getting satisfaction from the administration. And so we help to represent those. Now, I understand that, we as a board, we don't all agree on all of the issues, but you will find yourself in that position at times on issues that you think are important to you. So I wanted to make that point, and I think that alludes to what one of the speakers here, Juliet, said here this evening. So I wanted to address that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ungar. Ms. Pickett?
I'd like to start with wishing a happy Diwali. I believe that celebration was yesterday, so to families in our community who celebrate, happy Diwali to you. I encourage folks to do some research on that holiday and what that means to their culture. First, I'm going to address some of your comments, Chris. I'm super excited about Digital Citizenship Night. I will definitely be participating as a family, but I can speak only for my comments during curriculum meetings, but I think I mentioned family partnership almost at every meeting about how are we getting family feedback in this, or what does this look like? How do we share this with families? And I think this is amazing and a great step. So thank you to Carrie and to those supporting this event, and excited to participate. As far as your superintendent's advisory council, obviously the board had some discussions around this. I fully support this being a superintendent council and not a board council. I do want to just pick a little bit about how this council will be representative of our student population. So personally, I would like to see that the makeup of this council actually match our student demographics, looking at race, ethnicity, language, ability, disability, socioeconomic status, actually having the council reflect our student population, I think would be a really nice opportunity to ensure that we're hearing the voices that are representative of our families. I was definitely sad not to be here last meeting. EdSite is one of my favorite tools. The first time I came here as a parent, I referenced EdSite data. And I think the important piece, and this kind of, he left the room, but Mr. Janitis' comment about data is an interesting thing. You can manipulate numbers to tell a story, and I think that's why the importance of disaggregated data, which Chris referenced, as far as what is our achievement, what does our data look like based on student subpopulations. And I want to stress the importance of looking at disaggregated data because that's where our equity work really lies. I am excited to hear more, Chris, thinking about our budget, about the implications of this data. Once we know more about the needs of our students and families, what does this mean? How are we reimagining how we're doing things? How are we specifically addressing equity in our resources? What structures and supports and systems are we putting in place for staff? And I'm going to use a slight language change here. We talk a lot about an achievement gap, but honestly, it's more of an opportunity gap. So thinking about how we provide opportunities to all students. With your comment around partnering with families, I wholeheartedly agree with you. We expect a lot out of schools, and we expect schools to solve a lot of problems that they cannot solve alone. So I also wonder if this is an opportune time for us to review our community partners, formalize some of our MOAs and MOUs. How do we work smarter, not harder? And maybe it is really defining some of those amazing partnerships that already exist. I know we have some great partnerships, but looking at how that really supports a continuum of supports for our students and staff. A couple things that I want to touch on as far as audience member comments and board member comments here tonight regarding restrictions on books. I, too, would reference our equity statement that we all voted on and encourage folks to understand how, A, access to information is critical and that representation matters. So when we look at curricular resources, ensuring that they're representative of our students and students have access to information that resonates with them is really important. And if we sign on to our equity statement, I encourage us to think about what does that mean in practice. And then to you, Ms. Jackson, I have been thinking a lot about the incidents that happened to your son. And I do not control Enfield Public Police Department. I don't control all of those things. I don't even control public schools. I'm one board member up here. But I have encouraged our district to look critically at our MOA with the Enfield Police Department. What is the definition and roles and responsibilities of our SROs? What trainings and supports are they receiving? How are they involved in our continuum of behavioral responses? And so when an incident happens, what is the role of an SRO? And how are families and students aware of when SRO's involvement is included? I also think we know, unfortunately, that these instances are predictable. And that it's not unique. So thinking about how we address hate speech in school, when it's used student to student, things like that. What is our protocol? And what are some of our athletic protocols? So thinking around fundraising, game day, speech, things that happen at athletic events. So I think there is work that we can do, and I have faith in our district and the equity work that we are embarking on, that these matters will be addressed in a more holistic way. I want to thank all the volunteers, teachers, student volunteers, businesses, and families that showed up to the Jack-O-Lantern Festival. It's my, I think, favorite event. I will say on the ride home, my second grader son said, "Mom, this was the best night ever." So thank you to the folks who supported that. I also received notification that Heritage Fair is back. I fondly remember attending this at, I think it was at Stowe in the gym, like years ago. And so they're looking for folks to help plan this. I really encourage people. There's first meeting is on Wednesday, November 9th at 6:30 at Elkhorn. You can also reach out to Amy Whitbrow to please consider helping plan this event. Enfield Street School, again, I can't do the principal newsletter justice. I ask every family to make sure you're reading that or checking out Enfield PTO website, but there is a trunk or treat on Friday. Conferences are coming up, so please make sure you've made arrangements for conferences, and we also have an upcoming book fair.
Thank you, Ms. Pickett. Mr. Ryder?
So I have one note on behalf of the Henry Barnard / Prudence Crandall PTO trunk or treat event that Ms. Sakri mentioned. So that's going to be, as she mentioned, at the Asnuntuck Community College parking lot from 6 to 8 this Friday. The last day to RSVP, and you do have to RSVP for head counts, is tomorrow. There's a link that went out, and another reminder went out today from Henry Barnard. So thank you to Mr. Graham for reminding all the families regarding that. And also, if it does rain Friday evening, that function will move from out in the parking lot at Asnuntuck to inside at Prudence Crandall. So the event is rain or shine, but rain would move it indoors to Prudence Crandall School, not outside, obviously, at Asnuntuck's parking lot. Also, regarding Parkman, I know all of us were invited, and I hope you guys can all make it. And for those who haven't done this before, I encourage you to go. But this Friday, we were all invited to be guest judges for the Jack-O-Lantern Fest for the Mini-Me Grade 3 Pumpkin Judging Contest. We are all welcome to go at any time during school operating hours after 9:15. So once they get morning announcements and get things rolling, we are encouraged to go and sign in at the front door anytime between 9:15 and 3. So we're there after the morning rush and before the buses leave in the afternoon. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to go over there for a few minutes and walk around and see the pumpkins. Also at Hazardville, last week, many of us had the opportunity to be there again to celebrate our Teacher of the Year, Amber Venutos. Our chairwoman was there. Amanda, you were there. I was there as well. Chris and Andy, thank you for going. Town councilors Pisner, Mr. Finger, and Town Councilor Hopkins were also there. And I think it was great that we were there to celebrate Amber at Hazardville, where she does the great work that she does. So again, Amber, congratulations on your honor. And many of us were happy to be there to see you. And to see you where you work and where I spent 6 years with my two kids. I actually invited Mr. Drezik and our chair to come out and see the playscape that we had built while I was there, but we all got pulled away in different directions. But I am a huge fan and a huge cheerleader for Hazardville, and always has been and always will be. And so thank you again to Amber. Also at Enfield High, there's a Meet the Candidates night that's open to students and to the public. That'll take place in the cafeteria next Thursday at 6 p.m. And for my Eli Whitney updates, we have just two. We have our trunk or treat event will be tomorrow, again, weather permitting. It'll be from 4 to 6 in the parking lot throughout the Eli Whitney property. And if rain pushes us from Wednesday, it'll move us to Thursday, same time, 4 to 6. So either Wednesday or Thursday, we will get that in. And again, all Eli Whitney families and students are encouraged to come. And we will have our trunk or treat event there. Finally, for Eli Whitney on this Friday, this Friday, October 28th, they're having their Whitney Wolf Walkathon. And to the students' classroom with the most participation, those students, all 18 to 24 of them, will get a chance to douse silly string upon Mrs. Flanagan and Mrs. Fitz. So we look forward to that. So congratulations on another successful fundraiser. So we look forward to that on Friday. And that is all I have for this week. I just wanted to apologize again to everybody that was waiting for us. We had a meeting before this meeting that ran late, and I wanted to thank the speakers that came out tonight as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Just a couple of things I would like to, I have props, hold on.
Oh my. Can we bring props now?
You can bring props.
Who's going to bring props?
I attended the kite meeting last Wednesday night, and the PLA had come and spoken about placemats they had made with the community project. So here are some of the placemats that were at all of our seats. They were adorable. They were so sweet, and they were at every place setting. But this is a little bit of what they look like. All of them every single one of them was a work of art. So that was great. Dr. Jerry was there. Ms. Cushman was there. So I hope you got to see your placemats as well. I love when the community comes together for that. I would also like to thank Chef O and his group. They did the cooking for that event, and it was amazing. And the food offerings were plentiful. So I appreciate Chef O and crew for preparing the food for that. The other thing I want to talk about is I went to the Teacher of the Year ceremony, as Mr. Ryder had said, and listening to the teachers in the room talking about the camaraderie that they have and how they bounce ideas off of each other. I'm happy we're there again, because I know the teachers missed that type of collaboration during COVID and when we were doing online learning. And you can honestly just feel a lot of love in that room for love of teaching and the love of students. And it was great to see Amber's family there and, get to see that side of her. So that was amazing. I plan on going to the Mimi third grade pumpkin judging this Friday. If you haven't gone and you can make it, do it. It's amazing. The things that the kids put together for their pumpkins, it's really hard to judge. I'm not going to lie. It's not an easy job to do, but I'm thankful that Parkman does invite us to come. I love having the student reps, because I was going to talk about the U.S. Band Championship this Saturday from 10 to 9 at New Britain Stadium. New Britain Stadium is a great place to be able to watch something like the band competition. And I remember when we played New Britain, the band that New Britain had was great. And I know our marching band is doing a great job as well. I have a few SafeGrad updates. Saturday, December 3rd at 6 p.m. is the annual SafeGrad auction. And if you would like to make a donation or need more information, that information is going to come out later this week. And then they collected $1,000 worth of bottles at their recent bottle drive and 3,700 pounds of clothing. So they are very thankful for the community support of that. Just a couple questions for you, Mr. Dredzik. The digital citizenship nights, will the board members get an invitation to attend?
Yeah, when it gets all sent out, it'll be part of your regular package.
Okay, because I know a few board members spoke of that in curriculum and would like to see presentations on that. So, okay, so we'll get an invitation on that.
Or I can just send it to you now.
What'd you say?
Or I can just send it to you now.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad it's different nights, so we can all try to make it if we so choose. I wanted to mention too. I feel bad. The Unified Sports team, they weren't able to get to their soccer tournament last week because we had some busing issues, and I know that the parents and the students were upset about that. So I hope we can iron out those bus issues and make sure that they don't miss another event. The students were very sad, and it was a big soccer tournament that they look through for every year. I guess I'm going to end just a tiny bit heavy tonight. This all kind of ties in. So first, I would like to extend my condolences to Officer Alex Hamzy and Officer Dustin DeMonte of the Bristol Police Department. And also, I would like to send a word of bravery to Officer Alec Lorado. What had happened there was simply horrific. And, listening, to their lives, and they were dads, sons. It was simply horrific. But I have to say this. Last week, we had a swatting incident that has been, kind of a national thing. And I guess what I want to say is that I don't know who's doing it. I don't know if it's political, but a student commented how hard it was to have to go back to class and pretend like everything was okay. These incidences on our high school students, our middle school students, the fact that they are worried about this and scared is heartbreaking. They have so much pressure. We've talked about the mental health since returning from COVID. I reach out to the teachers because that some of them were crumbling inside because they were worried about the safety of their students and their safety of their families. And, we have had teachers in school shootings die protecting their kids, laying on top of their kids. This was unnecessary, and it was very scary. And I wanted to say to the students and the parents out there, and I'm sure I can speak on behalf of the board, that we're very sorry that this happened. And, we think of each and every one of you and how deeply it affected you in a different way. And just seeing what that student wrote, that really resonated to me because those students understand exactly what's happening. And I hope we get to the bottom of this. And I'd also like to say that to have it on a day where the state of Connecticut was honoring fallen police officers made it even more horrific that was done. And I always think about, our kids in the Enfield public school systems and families. So I'm just tying it back to that because I know parents were frantic last Friday, and it's a very scary feeling for the world that we live in right now. And I'll end with, for everyone who came to speak tonight, I think that there was some thought-provoking things that were brought up. Seeing that we are so new into the Alliance District, it's really hard for me to get a hold on exactly what I could suggest or champion that was suggested from the powers that be in Enfield Public Schools. Because now we're just getting the national report card, which is very telling. Thank you to the speakers that came tonight. I think everyone shows that they are passionate about whichever side of the aisle they are speaking on. So I understand that. And lastly, Ms. Jackson, in support of your son, I spoke, a few months ago after the community conversation, and I will say it again, I commend your son for the way he handled himself, and I apologize that he had to go through that. So I think that's all I have for this evening. Number 10, unfinished business. We have none. Number 11, new business. Item A, adopt new policies and policy revisions. First reading, Mr. Ryder.
So the policy committee members approved at their October 18th meeting to move forward several policies for first reading tonight. There were 5 new policies that were all included in your packets. There was a revision made to one of them multiple times, but we did get it right. So hopefully everybody has the most updated version. There was a language change that we all did have in advance of this meeting. So hopefully you've had a chance to review that, as well as 3 new policies that came to us at that meeting. So those proposed new policies are 3240, 4113.12, 6141.51, 6172.1, 7230.2, 5118, 5144.4, 6140. So that is my recap.
Do I have a motion to accept those policies on their first reading?
Moved.
So moved by Ms. Pickett.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Second by Ms. Acree.
I have a question.
Oh, okay. So you're okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Second by Mr. Hamry.
Correct.
Okay. And now we're into discussion. Ms. Acree.
I have a question. It was stated, I think it was 2 meetings ago, that the word minority in this policy was offensive. As an African American woman, I don't find that word offensive at all. I think of minority as a numerical, when you're talking about numerical data like the Republicans here and the minority, or, groups, a large group versus a small group of people. So I was just wondering, did someone state that this word was offensive, like a student or someone in our community state this?
I'm happy to respond. One is, if we are using the term minority in a mathematical term, then it would not even pertain, because unfortunately our students of color are almost at equal statistical. Our demographics are drastically shifting. So that would be even more problematic, because if we are using the term, it's not defined in the policy. So if we are using the term minority students to describe a numerical group of students, unfortunately that term doesn't accurately define our students of color for Enfield, because they are fastly approaching not to be in the minority as far as statistical data, as far as our enrollment numbers. The other piece around that is there is lots of guidance coming from the state and kind of best practice guidance around racial equity in particular, where the term minority, and I mean this with all due respect. I totally respect your opinion and your perspective, and my job here is not to persuade you differently. You have a right to that. But unfortunately, you and I both don't speak for all people of color. And the recent guidance from the state and from folks around racial equity work is that the term minority is offensive because it is related to statistical numbers, and unfortunately people of color are not statistically minorities in many places, so then it doesn't make sense. And the other term is that they are people of color, and so call them as such, and it's a strength-based term. So that was the recommendation that I had made, to adjust that language to reflect a strength-based perspective and to more accurately reflect what we were discussing in the policy. And since the term minority was not defined in the policy, I think we needed to clarify who we were talking about.
Go ahead, Ms. Acree. Are you all set, or did you have something?
No, not right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other discussion?
I have one item just on the revision of policy 5144.4. I'm totally okay with the wording there, so no adjustments. I just think as kind of a implication of the policy that it does reference removing recess if an alternate kind of option is provided. So we can take recess as a discipline measure as long as we are providing an alternate way for recess. And I would just really caution the use of ever removing recess for a student socially, and the need for kids, if we know about behavior, recess is probably something they need actually more of, not less of. So I'm just going to voice my worry about that, but I will support the policy. Don't have any changes in that, but just thinking critically about how we implement that policy with our schools.
And if I may, just to that point, Amanda, and I may be wrong, but I believe that was brought up in the discussions about that,
Yes.
that it's that there's the physical activity part is still in there, and acknowledging that it wouldn't be done without taking into account those concerns.
There is a separation between the word recess and the term physical activity.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Kathy?
Mrs. Cushman?
Yes.
Mr. Hamry?
Yes.
Mrs. Acree?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Ungary?
Yes.
Dr. Calnan?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item B, approve the 2023 schedule of regular Board of Ed meetings. Mr. Drezek?
Sorry, Mr. Longy was distracting me.
Schedule of regular Board of Education meetings.
Yes. So in your packet is this, you have to approve your schedule for the upcoming year's regular Board of Education meetings in accordance with your policy 9321.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the 2023 schedule of regular Board of Ed meetings?
Moved.
Moved by Ms. Pickett,
Second.
second by Mr. Ryder. Any discussion?
Yes. So the one date that jumped out at me is we have a regularly scheduled meeting during April break. And I know that on occasion we cancel meetings that happen during school recesses, not playtime recess, but school vacations. So if that meeting were to cancel, we would just follow our normal format and perhaps schedule an additional meeting if necessary that month?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Kathy?
Mrs. Cushman?
Accept.
Mr. Hamry?
Yes.
Mrs. Acree?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Ungary?
Yes.
Dr. Calnan?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, item C, I'm just trying to get to it in my agenda. The policies take up a big piece of. It's before the policies? Okay, let me get there.
Yeah.
Okay. In the past, we have had a CABE delegate, and it was Ms. Joyce Hall previously. And there's a CABE delegate assembly that is being held on Thursday, November 17th. Only delegates can vote on proposed resolutions. It would be appropriate for us to select a delegate and a representative to attend this year's CABE delegate assembly and represent Enfield. Therefore, we may take any actions deemed appropriate regarding the appointing of a CABE delegate to attend this year's assembly. Do I have any, should I make a motion and then do the discussion, or? Yeah. Do I have a motion to appoint a board member as the CABE delegate?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Pickett, second by Mr. Hamry. Any discussion? As anyone who would be interested in participating as a CABE delegate?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Having not talked about it in advance, I would also point at Mr. Ryder and say him. If it's a nomination thing, if you would accept it.
I would. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've attended a couple of CABE conferences, and to also take Joyce's seat specifically, at least for this delegacy, and then we could address it further down the road. But yes, I would be honored to represent the Enfield Board of Education at the CABE meeting on November 17th.
So Scott, is there any, okay. All right. So I guess would the motion be that we're going to appoint Scott Ryder? Do I have to amend the motion? Yes. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to amend the motion to include Scott Ryder as our CABE delegate.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Pickett.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ungary. We had our discussion, so roll call, Kathy?
Mrs. Cushman?
Yes.
Mr. Hamry?
Yes.
Mrs. Acree?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickett?
Scott Ryder.
Mr. Ryder?
I will say yes. Yes.
Mr. Ungary?
Yes.
Dr. Calnan?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, item 12, board committee reports. Curriculum committee, Ms. Pickett.
All right, so we had the pleasure of meeting last week. I really want to thank the staff that come to those meetings because they are after hours and they are pretty lengthy at times. So we had quite a few staff members who came in, provided us some updates. The first thing that we worked on was making some adjustments to course names and course descriptions, so they are actually more reflective of the content taught. So we did make some adjustments to art courses, tech ed, and tech ed courses. We also addressed equity explicitly. So our ESOL course credits at the high school, I want to really thank Ms. Burr for looking at how we offer credits to students in our ESOL classes, and we will now be providing up to 2 English credits, potentially for ESOL 1 and 2, and an elective credit for ESOL 3. Again, there's individual circumstances and like context around this, so if you are a student in ESOL classes, I encourage you to reach out to your school counselor to talk about how your credits are being coded, because there's a difference between an English credit and elective credit, and take advantage of that policy because it does help you reach those graduation requirements. So thank you to the district for that work.
And ESOL means?
Oh, sorry. English as a second language.
Thank you.
So it's our students who are multilingual, right? Sorry. Acronym city here in education. And I also want to highlight John Digg, and I'm going to hold it up, but I believe it's as part of our course of study work at the high school. This is a graphic demonstrating the 6 programs to prepare Enfield students for post-secondary study and careers. Highly impressed by the work that our district is doing to really expand career and college connections. So it's not just about college coursework, it's also promoting and supporting students that college might not be their pathway and career is more of their pathway. And, you know, I expressed tonight with the Career Center how we might even work on expanding these. So thank you to the district for this work. I am excited to possibly attend a high school program of study night to better understand how families are aware of these opportunities, because that's awesome. We did have 2 items from the table, which will come up. One came from me, which was to discuss some of our policy implications on our TAG program. So we would like to look at policy 6141.52, which was passed last board meeting, and some policies that were addressed tonight to really understand how that policy implements our design or redesign of the TAG program. Ms. Cushman, you also provided some questions to us in paper form regarding the pizza assignment. I'm just going to ask you again to share that those questions with myself, Ms. Middleton, Mr. Drezick, and Ms. LeBlanc as far as how we address those.
Thank you. The Finance Budget Committee, Dr. Kalnin.
No report.
Policy Committee, Mr. Ryder.
As we discussed earlier with the first readings of several new policies, we met last week on October 18th. Our next scheduled meeting is currently November 15th.
Leadership Committee, we have not met. Joint Facilities Committee, Mr. Ryder.
Joint Facilities Committee is next meeting November 10th.
The JFK Building Committee, Mr. Ryder.
Mr. LeBlanc nor I prepared a recap because I thought that we would have Mr. Daigle here, and I thought Randy would fill us in. So I look forward to seeing Randy at the next meeting.
Perfect.
I thought I could not do my homework on that one.
Joint Security Committee.
The Joint Security Committee will be reconvening shortly. There was just a recent school security safety project put together, and we will be meeting shortly. I don't have a date yet, but we should have that soon. And as soon as I have that, I can share that with the board.
And on that, thank you to our town manager for answering the email that came across for that. And then the Enfield Mental Health and Wellness Group, Dr. Kalnin.
No report for this month.
Enfield Cultural Arts Commission, Mr. Hamry.
ECAC was represented this past weekend at the Jack-O-Lantern Festival, had a great turnout, and as a incidental to several things happening in the school in the town. The discussion that I had with Chris Sosha from our policy prior to the policy meeting, the curriculum meeting beginning, I've learned that the Enfield teachers have a lot of artistic creativity outside of their academic fields. So it was a nice connection to be made that I could share with them that the Opera House Players are having a fundraiser to benefit the Loaves and Fishes, where the talents are invited to audition to be part of the benefit happening in early December, I believe December 7th. So along with that, Mr. Socha was able to push that out to the teachers that are interested. And I happened to talk to Miss Shell for the marching band at Enfield High School, just in passing again at the football game, and they've been invited to put together a program of whatever they're interested in as far as the marching band and drumline. So that would be the ECAC for the time being. Thank you.
I wanted to mention I got an emo shirt at the football game. They were selling T-shirts there, so
I'm
I
telling
grabbed
you,
one.
they do everything they can to fundraise to benefit the band, and I do appreciate all the work that goes into it.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you for that purchase.
And then we're going to move on to item 13, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the regular Board of Ed meeting minutes from October 11th, 2022?
So moved.
So moved
Second.
by Mr. Ryder, seconded by Mr. Hamry. Show of hands. Item 14, approval of accounts and payroll.
No report for this meeting.
Number 15, there is no correspondence and communications. Number 16, Mr. Drezek, do we have a need for executive session?
We do not, but Madam Chair, if I may, the reason I was distracted was I did forget to add something to my superintendent's report, and that is we are going to continue, for the time being, providing free lunch for all of our students. It is not going to
Great.
expire at the end of this month. We have to give 30 days. Ms. Edwards is currently working on a plan to see if we can extend that for an even longer period of time.
So-
I apologize, but Sydney threw me off by going up against my nephew.
So October 31st
October
can come and go, but
31st
we're going to
can come
still
and go.
continue
We're
to
gonna
offer free
continue
lunch.
through at least November, at least the beginning of November, with the hopes of continuing it longer. I'll give you an update at the next meeting when it's more formal, but she's working on a plan right now to continue that even longer.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ryder, seconded by Mr. Hamry. All in favor?